Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Developmental Psychology edition of 5-Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at genetics, starting with an overview of genetics before looking at 2 processes of cell division. Finally, we'll look at 4 patterns of genetic expression. To fully appreciate development, we need to understand how genetic information is inherited from our parents and then expressed in ourselves. Well, it starts at conception, when a sperm penetrates an ovum, creating a single-celled zygote with 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent. A chromosome is a thread-like structure that is made from DNA, which resembles a twisted ladder in shape. Sections of this ladder are our genes, which provide the chemical code for development, and each chromosome contains thousands of genes. Our cells divide at an exponential rate until we have billions of different cells in our body, each with the same 46 chromosomes that we inherited at conception. So how does this cell division happen? It's called mitosis, and the way it works is that a cell with its 46 chromosomes first duplicates all of its chromosomes and then splits into 2 different cells that are each genetically identical to the original cell. And voila, 2 cells with the same 46 chromosomes. All our cells duplicate through mitosis except for sperm and ovum cells. They duplicate through a process called meiosis. With meiosis, the cell first duplicates its 46 chromosomes, but then adjacent chromosomes mix up their genetic material through a process called crossing over. This then creates unique combinations of genes on the chromosomes. Like mitosis, this cell then divides into 2 new cells, each with 46 chromosomes, but then unlike mitosis, each of those cells then divides into 2 sperm or ovum cells containing 23 genetically unique unpaired chromosomes. Our genes make up our genotype, but what we see on the outside is our phenotype, or the ways in which our genotype is expressed, and these may not match up perfectly. The simplest scenario is a trait that follows a pattern of simple dominant recessive inheritance, in which the expression of a trait is determined by only one pair of genes, with one gene coming from the mother and the other from the father. If the 2 genes are the same, then they're homozygous, and you will see the genes expressed in the phenotype. But if each gene is different, then they're heterozygous, and the gene that's expressed in the phenotype is whichever one is dominant. But the individual still carries the other gene, the one that's not expressed, and this gene is said to be recessive. For example, whether you have curly or straight hair is up to 2 genes. One you get from your mother and the other from your father. So, suppose a C is the gene for curly hair, written in capitals because it's also dominant, and S is the gene for straight hair, which is a recessive gene. Let's say that each of your parents have curly hair, which is their phenotype, but they each have a heterozygous genotype with CS. If you draw this out in a 2x2 matrix, with each column and row representing a different gene from each parent, then you'll see that as their child, you had a 50-50 chance of having a homozygous genetic makeup, inheriting CC, where you'd have curly hair, or SS, where you'd have straight hair. There's also a 50% chance that you'd have a heterozygous genetic makeup, inheriting CS. Since the gene for curly hair is dominant, your phenotype would be curly hair, even though your genotype would be curly and straight hair. So with parents who each have this CS genetic makeup for curly hair, you'd have a 75% chance of having curly hair yourself and a 25% chance of having straight hair. But often, the way that a trait is expressed is based on multiple genes, called polygenic inheritance, like it is with eye color, height, weight, intelligence, and even personality. It's also possible that genetic expression is codominant, where you have 2 dominant genes that produce a phenotype that's a combination between the 2 genes, and both get to be fully and equally expressed. An example of this is when you have blood type AB. Finally, genetic expression could be based on a pattern of sex-linked inheritance, where you inherit a recessive gene on the X chromosome from your mother. Unfortunately, these recessive genes are usually for traits that you wouldn't want, like colorblindness or hemophilia. But because females have another X chromosome from their father, they're able to counteract the bad effects of the recessive gene, and so they rarely show these disorders in their phenotype. But males don't have another X chromosome, and so they will have the disorder as part of their phenotype. This is why both these disorders are much more common in males than females. Well, we just discussed genetics by beginning with an overview before exploring 2 processes of cell division. Finally, we looked at 4 patterns of genetic expression. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?